Hello and welcome. Today is May 21st. We're in Zone 8A and it's a gorgeous afternoon in El Paso. And I'm going to show you a little bit about what's happening and what's going on in my garden here and kind of give you an idea of what's happening in May and what we're going to be doing in May, how the garden looks, what's good, what's not good, and there's going to be some videos that I'm going to be shooting that are going to be off of today's video. I'll give you kind of a hint of how we're going to be doing some of that stuff. We have some garlic that we're going to be harvesting. We're going to be harvesting potatoes, and I'm going to show you a little bit of how we do our fertilizing. So I'm going to do a fertilizing video. So again, please subscribe and you'll be notified of that video. So today I'm going to take you on a little tour and show you what is going on and what to look for in your garden.
So let's take a look and see what's happening here first. I have a lot of things going on in here, and remember, I do square foot gardening, so everything that I have that's going on here is it looks like it's a jungle, but it's very organized. So I have my tomatoes that are trellised. I have a separate video that we just did that please look for that one on how to trellis your tomato plants, but also how to look for these little things that we call suckers. So when you have these little plants here that are coming out of the tomato plant, you kind of come out here every 2 or 3, 4 days, and you kind of just cut those out, because again, look, I was out here just 3 or 4 days ago and we got another one that comes out. So they're right next to your flowering part of the tomato plant. I have my pole beans here. They're doing well, and so what's interesting is they're not doing as well in the back part of my garden here as they are here in the front part. So as you can see, these are doing really well. There's a lot of flowers, and you can see here a lot of these beans that are coming in, and the ones that have been in here for a little bit longer, we already got a lot of beans that we're going to be pulling out. Okay, so a lot of beans we can pull off this plant. And I have tried a little experiment this year, and I'm putting my onion plants, as you can see here, on the outside of my garden. They're doing really well, all of them, but I wanted to show you this because what I had done in the past is just kind of put a little area where I'm putting the onions, but this year I've kind of tried to put them in and the outside of the garden, so that kind of helps keep some of the pests away. So if you see here, we got some bulbing going on in a lot of these onions that are happening. I have companion plants, and this is one that will help keep a pest away, and this is the marigolds. So you want to plant marigolds. I also have here my depending on how you want to pronounce it, it's either shallot or shallot, and in between here we have our cucumbers. So cucumbers are trellising, so they're going to be, and you can see how they're growing up quite a bit. I've got a lot of flowers. I experimented this year with 2 different types of cucumbers this year, and the first one, the traditional cucumbers, the munchers, the straight eights, all those, they need to be fertilized by the male and the female plant. And you can see I've got a ton of flowers, which are great, but they have to be fertilized. The other side here, these are a different type of cucumber, and these are self-fertilizing. I'll put a link below on those, but you can see here you already have fruits that are growing because they're self-pollinating. So I'm trying those out this year to see if I get any different production. This here is my bell pepper. Bell pepper is doing really well. I also have another bell pepper, and we also have the plants that I planted. I'll put a link in the description box below. These jalapeno plants and this shishito pepper plant that I overwintered. So you can see here, there's plenty of shishito peppers that I have. If you haven't had shishito peppers, Those are just amazing. Those are really good. And for an experiment, I planted another shishito pepper plant right next to it. It's equally as productive, and it's growing a little taller than the one that I overwintered. So we'll see how that ends up at the end of the year. I have here a jalapeno plant. They're kind of coming along very well. Again, nice fruit there. And in the back here, I also have some paprika peppers that I put in this year to make some Hungarian paprika. So we'll see how that works too. So tomato plants are doing well. As you can see here, got a little bit of tomatoes kind of coming in. This is my cherry tomato. And so there's a lot of flowers on my tomato plants, and I attribute a lot of that to the early things that I did when I transplanted my plants. And I'll link a video to that, but again, if you want to subscribe to the channel, you can take a look and see what we did with that and how I fertilized when I planted. These are my grow boxes, and you can see these are the fall crops that, or really the spring that kind of went bad at this point. So I'm going to be planting some other stuff, and you can see I planted a basil here. This is my elephant garlic. We're going to be taking that, and I'm going to show you how we harvest that and how that looks. Again, I'll put a link in the video description below on when we planted those back in October. So take a look at the garlic. The garlic is pretty much ready to be harvested. You don't water them for about maybe a week or so before you harvest, so then that way the bulbs are getting to become dry. So I'll do a video on that. Behind we have corn. I have my tomatillo plant, and then these massive leaves. Take a look at those. Those are just amazing. The size that these zucchini are. Now, the one thing that's really impressive about this zucchini, and I really attribute this, I want to say, on the amount of fertilizing that I did at the very beginning when I transplanted this, but there are a ton of females and a few males, which is crazy, because every year I usually get just the opposite. I get nothing but males and all females. And I attribute that really to putting the fertilizer in the hole when you transplant, or if you plant seeds, and I put bone meal in there in addition to everything else. So that's a big thing I think that we'll continue with. Here is my poblanos and my green chilies from Hatch, famous New Mexico green chilies. Got a lot. Those are coming along really well. These are big gems, and these are already probably 6 or 8 inches long. So these are coming along really well, and we don't have anything going on here, although we do have some flowers that are happening on this particular one. But this is my the Anaheim long green. It's a mild chili, and I do have some other chilies back there. The last of my fall crop is my broccoli. Nothing is happening on this broccoli plant. I've already harvested one, and then you can see a small crown here on this broccoli here. So we'll be pulling those out, be harvesting that, and then we'll be planting some other stuff in between. These are my tomatillos, and one of the things that you have, again, I'll put a link below on one of the issues that I had last year with a tomatillo plant. They grow huge, they grow beautiful, but you have to have 2 of them to fertilize. They are not self-fertilizing, and so I planted 3 this year, because last year I only planted 1, and I got nothing but flowers, and you can see these beautiful flowers, but I got no fruit at all. So tons and tons of flowers. In the back, which I'm going to rethink next year, is my Brussels sprouts. As you can see, they're kind of overwhelmed by my tomato plant. I thought that the tomatoes weren't going to grow as quickly as they did, and they're already probably about 4 foot maybe even 4.5 foot tall. They're going to grow up on this trellis, and they'll continue to grow over that way. So next to this, again, we have companion plants. One of the companion plants that you want to have next to your tomato plants that help with pests are basil. I have two types of basil here. I have a regular basil, and then I also have a lime basil. So those are really good. I did a separate video on this, but I'm going to show you real quick what we do with this. When you see your basil plants do this, you do not want them to flower. When they flower, then they pretty much, that tells that they're bolting and that they're going to go into seed. And these are all the little seeds in there, and you don't want them to go into seed, because then the plant essentially dies. So if you just snip off the top part of these, where you have these flowers that come out and the stem, you can just snip those off, and what you'll do is allow that plant to continue to grow, and it'll get even bushier than it is right now. So again, there's all my cucumbers that are growing in there, and plenty of flowers on these beautiful Hungarian paprikas. So that's kind of where we're at. I always try to keep space for a few of my container plants, and of course, if you have any kind of pollinators, you want to attract your pollinators, you can get your pollinators these bee little hotels, if you will. And also we have hummingbirds. So hummingbirds come and they really like this area here for some reason. My asparagus, we've already done quite a bit of asparagus, which has been really prolific this year. And again, I still have some asparagus that are growing, and the growth of the asparagus has been great. So I have a rose, one single rose that's kind of come up. And then I have a pole bean again, and we're trellising that up, and then we'll come through down there. Over here, I also have my loofahs that I planted. Those are kind of coming in, and you can see this one is starting to grow and look to start trellising. So we're gonna, I'll link a video on that one too, the trellis video for the loofah. Again, another tomato plant that I have. I've got aloe vera, and this is my spaghetti squash. And spaghetti squash, again, you can see all of the male flowers. So the difference between the male and the female flowers, the male flowers just have this long stem and no fruit. And down here, if you can see, there's the female with the flower at the end, and that's the fruit at the end. So this fruit needs to be fertilized by the male, and if that doesn't happen, then they die. Well, the female part dies. So, and then they just keep producing. So we'll see how that does. Mexican petunias, and then I have some beautiful sunflowers that are coming along. They're going to be opening up pretty soon. And then this is my new plant that I planted this year, and this is a hibiscus plant, and we're going to be doing a separate video on that. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, and you'll see what we're going to do with this hibiscus plant. So if you watch the video that I did on trellising and pruning your tomato plants, I told you that you can take those and put those in a container. And now, after about a week or so, take a look at this. I put them in water, and now you have your own separate tomato plant, and we can just take this tomato plant, put that into the ground, and we'll have a whole new tomato plant. So you're going to have tomato plants forever. Until next time, happy gardening.